Good morning, Shadowverse fans. So today I wanted to show off my build that I just hit Diamond with. Overall, it has been pretty steady on its performance. It's pretty consistent. It's pretty strong overall. I thought overall though, it is pretty different from the build I first started streaming with when the new patch launched. There's a lot of changes that were made, a lot of things overall improving the consistency, the power of the build. In this video, I want to go over many things, like some of the cards I like to see based off particular matchups in my hand, what ways I use particular cards. So, for example, Wilbert being on turn 6, the second you have them, the second you drop them kind of deal, I think a lot of times is actually incorrect. There's a lot of times I actually don't even use Wilbert until like turn 8. The reason why is before you say you're losing out on value. You're losing out on the +1/+2 the longer you wait. And you're right, but dropping him turn 6 is setting you up for a turn 7 getting turn 7 Odin, which any Ward player who plays Wilbert knows all too well, resulting in a free super evolve and 7 to the face. And if you don't know how to handle the early game, that could be potentially irreparable damage. So what I've actually been doing is stepping away from using Wilbert turn 6, and kind of using other cards turn 6, right? Like, it's not uncommon that, like, if I have, like, Darkhaven's Grace on board, I'll Sailfa Darkhaven, or, like, I'll Grimnir, like, I actually don't always, unless I know it's super safe to drop Wilbert, or if Wilbert was to get Odin'd and super evolved, I would still be very fine. I don't drop him turn 6. And I think that's a huge mistake a lot of players have been making. So, with that being said though, I do want to go into my choices for cards, ratios, and explanations on why. Then we're going to get into matchups. After, I'll show some videos of some of the people I versed in ranked on my way to Diamond. These will be me being in Sapphire, me being in Diamond, maybe one or two of me being in Diamond, but this is to teach you how to get to Diamond, not stay in Diamond. I have, like I said, I just got there yesterday, so whether I stay there or not is, who knows, but I can at least show you how to get to Diamond. So to start off, I only play 2 Divine Guard. Divine Guard overall is a very good card. However, I swear and I promise you this card is programmed to hit the worst target possible. The amount of times I would use it and they have like 2 bodies on board and I'm like, please don't hit the 1/1 with death touch, last word, and it does. Or there'll be like 4 bodies on board and I'll be like, it can hit any of them but this one card and I'll be fine. And it hits that one card. Is astronomical. But where it does shine is comboing it with, like, let's say you use Divine Guard. If there's 2 monsters you're about to kill, you need to kill, right? You can like summon something, evolve it, and then Divine Guard hit something, whatever, it doesn't matter which one it kills because you swing at the other one and kill the other one, right? Or in certain circumstances, it can act as a pseudo rush against other matchups, right? So let's say both parties have no evolves, no super evolves. As you can see with this build, other than Odin, I don't have Rush or Storm. But what I can do is summon like Jean Saintly Knight, clear most of the board, and then Divine Guard killing whatever the heck survived, right? Something like that, for example. So overall, I think 2 is fine. Any more is pretty rough. More times than not, you don't want to see this card in your opening hand. Sanctuary, staple. I see this card lasting in many Haven decks for a very long time. Is probably the best turn 1 card. One of the best turn 1 cards out there. You drop it, and then you forget about it, and then you get a +2, or +1 technically, because it itself dies. And if you don't have anything turn 2, you can engage it, right? If you have 2 of them in your hand, you summon one, pass, summon the other. Summon Sanctuary B, you engage Sanctuary A and forget about Sanctuary B. You'll draw 2 off Sanctuary A, and then eventually you'll draw 2 off Sanctuary Being. It's absolutely insane. 3 of must of. Bellringer as a 3 of, also must of. I think a lot of people don't use her correctly. A lot of people will just sit and forget. There are times where evolving her is actually incredibly strong because of the draw card. If you don't have Sanctuary, right, like Bellringer is your only draw in this deck. So you do need to utilize her to the best you can. Sometimes evolving her, if you don't have, like, let's say it's like you don't have Silpha, right? You're going first, you don't have Silpha, and you have like beast packs and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, evolving her actually isn't bad because she becomes a 2/4 and you draw a card, and then when they eventually do kill her, you draw another card, which could potentially fix a lot going on. I play 1 Darkhaven Grace. Honestly, this card is insane. I wish I could play more, but you can't. It conflicts with Aether if you have more than 1, and if you have more than 1 in hand, it is a dead card. You will probably almost never play the second one. Therefore, 1 is the answer. This card is really powerful, fending off some aggro. That +1 restore to your leader does add up after a while, and if you turn 2 this card, you get tremendous value, because, like, let's say you have Bellringer and you have Darkhaven in your hand. You could Darkhaven, turn 2, turn 3, you summon Leah, and then you +1/+1 Leah, making her a 1/3, making some aggro decks instantly have to think. Going into the next card, we have Angelic Maiden. This card is a 3 of, must of. The fact that it says when you unlock Super Evolve, give this follower +0/+3. That makes this card a 2/5 for 2 mana with Ward, which is insane. But not only that, if you have Wilbert, she becomes a +3/+7 for 2 mana. That is such a strong card. Not even mentioning if you have Jean in your hand and it's turn 10. There's so many interactions with this card. Not only that, she's a 2/2 for 2 with Ward. She's perfectly fine at fending off a lot of aggro early on. Having her in your hand early on is not a death sentence because of the fact that you summon her and they have to swing into it. Unless you're sword and you just hit it for 5, right? God forbid you also have Darkhaven's Grace with it. Now it's a 3/3 and it can get over almost everything other than the thing that hits it for 5. So, Pact of the Beast Princess is interesting. I didn't play this at first, but the more I thought about it, and I was talking to some people, and they kind of convinced me to try it. And honestly, the card is absolutely insane. I'm gonna be honest. The amount of crazy plays you can do with Pact of the Beast Princess with this deck is absurd. It has won me countless games. It provides high levels of threat, and if they don't have a crazy good hand, if they don't have it, like if you're versing Rune and they don't have Anne and Greya, they have to commit some crazy cards to kill it, or this card will just beat you down. Against aggro, it is so good. You drop it turn 2, you drop Leah turn 3, you engage this, you get Tiger, Tiger swings, kills whatever the heck they have on board, Leah protects the Tiger, or even if you have Charita, the Angelic Maid, now you have, it just does a lot against the aggro. And later on, there are ways to interact with this card in specific ways to make it even more crazy. Absolutely must have 3 of, in my opinion. It helps deter Ward and can get very powerful for free later on. Grimnir is only a 2 of though. I did play him at 3 for a while, but the problem with Grimnir is he is a 3 cost 2/3 with Ward, which is solid, and you gain the crest, which is also really good. However, the crest only activates while you control a super evolved ally. None of your super evolved allies will stick around more times than not past a turn, so you realistically are only getting for 2 turns, deal 2 damage to all enemy followers, which is really good. Not as strong to the point it warrants it being a 3 of. Because once you get out of super evolves, he loses a lot of power. Yes. He is a target for Aether. Yes. He gets buffed off of Wilbert. Becomes a 3/5. Still really good. But you gotta make cuts somewhere, and him being at a 2 is very fine. And I think is the correct number. I think 3 is too many, and 1 is not enough. Holy Shield Maiden. This card is actually surprisingly really good. Now, is a 3 cost 2/1, but has ward and barrier, which means it does in fact require at least 2 attacks or hits to kill it unless you have Bane. However, where this card gets crazy is later on when you summon it off of Aether after you've Wilbert, and she's like a 3/5 with ward, aura, Bane, and you're buffing it with Darkhaven's Grace, and all of a sudden they just... Good luck, you know? Good luck is all I gotta say. Dealing with it. Cleric of the Crushing. Honestly, depending on what you see a lot of, you could run 3 Cleric and 2 Holy Maiden, or 2 Cleric and 3 Holy Maiden. Between these two, you want 5. If you could find a way to fit them both being 3/3, it's not the worst in my opinion, right? However, because it's a 3 cost 2/4, which does curve a lot on their board, it is very powerful at handling a lot of aggro. However, it kind of falls off a little bit compared to the others when the game progresses. What I mean is, yes, she is 1 health more than Grimnir, right? However, Grimnir offers the 2 cleave to all, and they're both 2-ofs anyways. Holy Shield Maiden has barrier, which inherently, unless you're versing Onion, is very powerful. And she becomes really obnoxious when she's like a 3/5 or a ward Bane, compared to Cleric becoming a 3/7, which is strong, don't get me wrong, but it could still die in 1 hit, right? Holy Maiden can guarantee it takes 2 hits, unless once again Bane exists. So overall, between like Holy Maiden and Cleric, I think Holy Maiden's slightly better because later on Holy Maiden starts to scale better, is the best way to put it. And then obviously Angelic Maid is a 2 cost ward compared to them being 3 cost wards, right? And Holy Maiden Angelic Maid literally becomes a 2/5 for 2 mana later on. It's not comparable in my opinion. I did Sarissa is only a 2-of. I think she's a trap. I think putting her at 3 is too reliant on her, and 2 increases the odds that you summon her unnaturally. What I mean unnaturally, I mean like Aether summoning her when you need more wards, having her in your hand when you need something else, right? I do think she's incredible, and her evolve effect with barrier comes up surprisingly more than you might think. More than you might think. If you have, on turn 5, if you have Sarissa and Darkhaven, you can play both, buff her to 5/5, give her barrier, and then swing into like the 5 cost legendary that like Blood uses or Abyss uses, right? Kill it, and this stays on the board. Surprisingly holds up. So don't sleep on her, but don't rely on her, is the best way to put it. She comes in useful later on in the game, more than early in the game, though. And because of that, she's also set to 2, because there are, like, you don't want her in your hand early on, but you want, like, seeing her later on can be nice. Because of that, having her at 2 increases the chances you'll see her later on, but decrease the chances you see her early on, is the best way to put it. Selfa being a 3-of is incredibly important. This helps you curve a lot of aggro because of her evolve effect of dealing 3 to all followers, enemy followers, and ward, and restores 3 defense to all enemy leaders. This card also starts to play even stronger later on when you have Super Evolve, because you have the 3 to all followers, plus you have Grimnia's 2 to all followers, resulting in her being a 6/6 with Ward that does 5 to all followers. Practically more times than not clearing the board. Overall, this card is really good. It helps tremendously against a lot of matchups, especially like this card is like almost mandatory. In fact, dare I say actually mandatory into like Abyss aggro, right? Just because the amount of free quick damage they can chip you with, like hit you, like summon a ghost and swing, summon a mummy and swing, right? Like they can just keep hitting you with storm, right? Making it kind of hard to really deal with it. And the difference between Dragon Face and Abyss Face is Abyss Face can summon a 0/1/1 skeleton and then kill it off their own card and kill anything instantly that doesn't have aura, right? A Face Dragon can't do that as easily, right? So it results in like these ward cards kind of being able to be played around slightly easier, and Abyss has like Rager of the Serpent that can just flat out do 3 damage to your leader, or evolving the 5-drop of legendary they have that does 3 to your leader. They can get away with free damage easier than Face Dragon could in set 1. So I would say Sailfa is even more important into Face Abyss than Face Dragon. Now for Wilbert, he is really good. I'm not going to downplay him. He is absolutely bonkers. He is a ward that you almost always will evolve the first time you summon him. He'll become at least a 5/8 or 6/8, my bad. 6/8, which is huge for a 6 cost that has ward. He will then give all other ward allies for the rest of the game +1/+2. And that doesn't go away. When he does die and go to grave, he summons 2 more wards that become 2 4s. Overall, Wilbert is really good. However, I think a massive trap, as I said earlier, a lot of players get into with him is they play him the second they can. And the problem is when you do that, you are setting yourself up to get a massive punishment if they can punish you. That is because in the same exact set, they released Odin. Odin is curved perfectly off of Wilbert. The only time playing Wilbert as soon as possible is the correct call, is if you're going second and you have your coin on turn 5. That is because they cannot Odin him. Past that, you generally don't want to rush him out, only because he's gonna get banished and you're gonna take damage for it. The only time I recommend risking it is one, if you literally don't have a choice. Like, if you don't play him, you lose, and if they have Odin, you lose anyways. Or you're like at 20 health, turn 6, they have nothing on board. Right? Yeah, go for it. Like, cool, they're gonna summon Odin, banish him, maybe Super Evolve, and hit you for 7. You're at 14 still, you're fine. Right? Now, once again, that also depends on the matchup. But you can get away with it a lot easier in those circumstances. Usually what I'll do is I'll wait until I can play him and something else, right? So like maybe a Bellringer in Wilbert, or maybe a like Angelic Maid in Wilbert, because if they do banish him with Odin, Odin still can't hit face. He is protecting, the other is protecting him. If you have a ward on your field turn 6, and you have him in your hand, and you have another ward, not including Wilbert, you can play him. This is because, yes, there's a chance Odin will banish him, but once again, something like Grimnir will still be able to take the hit off of Odin, and you don't take the damage, which is the most important part about when you play Wilbert, is you don't want to make yourself vulnerable to free damage if they have Odin. Unholy Vessel as a 2 of, I've heard a lot of people tell me to cut it. I absolutely cannot stress this enough. Do not cut Unholy Vessel. People say, well, your goal is to keep pushing and keep your wards on board, and if you have to use it, something's going wrong anyways, and you're not in a good spot. Well, this is Shadowverse, not Hearthstone. We have our board clears through the roof in this game. It doesn't matter what you summon. You could summon an Aether, Super Evolve her under Wilbur, and that board still can get cleared at the snap of a finger sometimes. You just can't rely on not having your own reset button. And you don't have one outside of it. You need a reset button occasionally. Later in the game, sometimes Unholy Vessel into Bellringer might be the play that saves you. So, I personally don't think you should cut Unholy Vessel. I think it is crucial to this deck's chances of later game stuff. Not only that, you need to remember, when you run out of Evolves and Super Evolves, other than Odin, you don't have Rush. You don't have Storm. You need ways to reset. I guess you have Rush through Pact of the Beast Princess, but you have to set that up. You can't summon it the turn you play it. That's also where Divine Guard kind of starts to come in use, right? Unholy Vessel and Divine Guard are more pseudo rushes / pseudo reset buttons that sometimes you just need. If they summon, think about it. If you're versing Rune and they summon Kuon and Super Evolve Kuon and swing face at you for 4 and pass, what sounds better? Wasting a Jean, right? You have nothing on board and wasting a Jean, or Unholy Vessel into summoning a Beast Pact Princess, engaging it, so it summons itself next turn, right? That's 9 mana, right? That's 9 mana between these two, which you could argue differently because Jean is 8. But even if we don't include the Beast Princess, just unholy it. If you're down in Evolve / Super Evolve counter, they have more than you. These equalize it. You just need them. I'll also talk about this interaction, the Unholy Vessel into Beast Pact Princess, in a second. After I'm done with the build, that is a huge combo that literally sets you up for crazy levels of gameplay. I'll explain that in a second, right? To Odin is just disgusting. It is a pseudo, you super evolved one guy in swung or whatever and passed. Okay, I'm just gonna Odin it and get rid of it, right? It also gets rid of amulets. Fun fact: you're versing an amulet deck that isn't Earthright. Earthright's amulet has aura. So you can't target it. This card outs so much. It is the second or first best card, depending on what you want to say, in the game. In the set, at least. And it outs... You're versing a mirror match and they summon Lapis, just banish it. You're versing... They have an amulet. You're versing Portal and they have that catapult to summon a guy out whenever they need to. You can banish it. You can get rid of it. You're versing the mirror match and they have a Serenity that's going to draw them 2 next turn. Just banish it. Yeah, you can banish it. They have a Darkhaven's Grace that's causing you a lot of problems. You can banish it. It outs amulets. It outs bodies. It's huge. And once again, obviously, the Wilbert banish, right? It's insane. It's just so strong. You just can't ignore it. You need at least 2, in my opinion. I play 3 Aether. This card is insane. Even if you don't have Wilbert by herself, she is still insane. Summon 3 differently named followers that cost 3 less from your deck. Ward, summoning wards off of it. Fun fact. Maybe the occasional Sarisa if they decide to give you a Sarisa. You super evolve it, give them all +0, +2, and aura, and all of a sudden they might not be able to clear your board now because they can't target it with abilities. And yeah, it's really good. So, fun fact: if I have to coin early on, right, going second, because let's say I'm versing aggro and they have a turn 1 drop body drop, right? It is uncommon. I'll coin drop beast to the pact to the beast princess right away on my first turn, and then my second turn I'll drop maybe like a Darkhaven's Grace, and then on my third turn my beast princess will spawn, and then I'll summon like Charissa, and then I'll Dark Haven's Grace the Charissa, and then swing with the Tiger to kill a body, heal for 1, and start clearing their board and have a 3/3 ward on board, right? Sometimes you need to think ahead with this deck. You can't just play on curve, if that makes sense. So if that's the case, and I can't turn 5 Wilbert, I'll actually just coin an Aether turn 6, right? And then Super Evolve her, and if they don't clear it, now you have a free, safe Wilbert to draw. There you go. Now, sometimes that's what you gotta do. This card is arguably one of the best cards in the set. It is only gonna get better because it doesn't say they have to be Haven. It's just 3 cost or less, which means neutral cards that they release, anything they release going forward is going to be so strong with this card. It is going to only get better, because keep in mind, it doesn't give the allied followers that you summoned off of it +0/+2, it's all other. So if you have amulets set up, let's say you have a Pact of the Beast Princess set up off of, let's say in theory, that Unholy Vessel play I was just telling you about. Your turn starts, you summon the Pact of the Beast Princess, summons your Holy Flame Tiger. You then summon Aether, and then she'll summon 3 more, let's say, wards, right? So now you have 4 wards on board. You then Super Evolve her, give them all +0/+2, including your Tiger, and you give your Tiger Aura. So now you have a 4/6 Aura Rush Tiger that they can't attack because you have 4 other wards on board, and God forbid you have Jean lined up for it next turn, because they're probably not killing, right? Fun fact, you could do that with Jean as well. You can do this combo, the Unholy Vessel, Pact of the Beast Princess, right? And then set this up to be summoned at the start of your next turn, guarantee. And then you summon, let's say you could summon like Sharita, and then she becomes a 2/5. Let's say in theory we don't have Wilbur. Just for the downplaying this play, right? You don't have Wilbur. So she's a 2/5, and he is a 4/4. You then Jean, making the Tiger a 4/8, and her he becomes a 6/8, and she becomes a 4/9. So you have a 4/9 ward, a 6/8 rush, and a 6/6 ward on board. That's really terrifying to get through. No, like I said, we're not including Wilbert buff, which would put these cards even further into the good luck outing this board super easily, right? You have to commit some serious stuff to have a chance. And that's where we get with Jean. Like, Jean is 6 tall followers, and you kind of can set up some crazy stuff. I think Jean plays better in this deck than she did in the previous deck, because a lot of times, like, there was a lot going on with the previous set's deck where there was a lot of waiting. Not waiting, but like you'd summon something and you couldn't really get something out of it right away. You had to wait, and all of a sudden you're behind because you didn't have anything really going for you, right? Your Tigers were like your best bet. Your Eagles kind of were slow, and so on and so forth. However, I think the fact that you can, like, I don't know, like Beast Pact, Crushing Cleric, Sharita, pass, right? And that's what, 5, 7, 8 mana right there, right? And like you're probably not gonna die off that play, right? And then it like becomes your turn, and now you can like Jean or I think it's fine. I think it's good. I think the fact that this build overall did really good. Yeah, now we can talk about matchups. So with this is my opinion, the favorabilities of each matchup, um, just as a whole. So our very favorable decks are the forest decks. Like honestly, I've never lost to a forest in set two. I'll be real. Once you get Aether out, it's kind of just game over for them. And until then, just treat them like you would an aggro deck, right? And you'll be fine. There's really not much more to say about it. Honestly, like they kind of just give up the second you summon Aether and just super evolve it. They can't do anything. They kind of have to rush you down before Aether, and so if you just treat it like you would any other aggro deck, you're fine. Your favorable matchups is aggro Abyss, Sword, more so an aggro Sword, Earthright, aggro Dragon, mid-range controlish Sword, and Storm Haven. So honestly, with Stormhaven, I genuinely don't know where this belongs. I've never versed the deck, so I just put it in favorable because we have favorability in every other aggro deck. So why not Sacred Griffin, Storm, right? So I would say the closest one you could put to neutral, and honestly, I wouldn't disagree with you if you did put it in neutral, would be Abyss aggro, and that's because they have so much free burn damage, you kind of just have to eat it. And it's kind of tricky, and it comes down to realistically how many Sailfas you see. So in neutral, you could put it in. Unfavorable, it comes down to luck, and favorability also comes down to luck. So actually, let's put it in neutral. Sword is honestly face sword is a lot easier to handle than any other aggro variant at the moment. Just ward up, heal up, use your Sailfa, and honestly, by the time you get into like an Aether, they're out of gas. Just survive till then. Keep warding, keep healing. Use your don't use your coin on Wilbert unless you absolutely can for somehow. Use it to try to curve off their aggression through, I don't know, Sailfa turn 4, and then on turn 6 you're gonna coin into Aether. They're gonna struggle heavily to out that board, which gives you a very safe Wilbert anyways. So you're kind of just going down that line. Earthright is pretty, honestly, I don't think I lose to Earthright very often. Usually it's like really bad luck. Don't get me wrong, their boss monster can be insanely annoyingly sticky. However, it ends up just becoming an 8/8 that pops 2, but can only pop 1 because Aether gave it everything else aura. So just set up a turn where you could burst kill it and kill all of their Earthright tokens, or force them into using a lot of Earthright early on through like using your Tigers on aggro and stuff like that, and they won't have a lot of Earthright to even maintain her past 1 or 2 deaths, which you could do in a single turn pretty easy. Keep in mind, she does have aura. You can't banish her with Odin. Aggro Dragon is insanely free nowadays. Their biggest weakness has always been ward. Your whole deck is ward. They just can't out the board. Like, literally, you just win. So, nothing really crazy past that, honestly. Like, just ward up, play your Sailfa when you can. Aether, like, pretty much treat it like you would any other aggro deck, and you'll be fine, really. Mid-range sword has become a lot easier to handle, for me at least. Aether is very useful into this matchup. Jean kills this board pretty quickly. Sailfa nukes this board. Overall, it's not incredibly hard to out. However, I will point out their legendaries from set 2 can be really tricky, which is where you need to use your Odin and where you need to use your what's it called? Vessel, sorry. You need to, like, the big thing you need to remember when it comes to mid-range sword is they have more super legendaries than you. Super evolves than you, I mean. They do. They have a card that says after they've summoned 20 mobs, super evolve for free. You have to accept this, and you have to use things like Shield Bash and stuff like that. Not Shield Bash, Divine Shield, I think it's called. I'm horrible for remembering names. To kill it, or Odin banish it, But you also need to use Odin Banish on the guy who literally says when you summon something and can't attack for the turn. You can't out that, you're gonna lose, plain and simple. So there are a lot of gears going, but as a whole, you can out their board easier than they can out your board, is the best way to put it. And because of that, realistically, it is in your favorability. Dare I say, out of all the favorabilities, this is your least favored, right? Like Sacred Griff, like these aggro decks are a lot easier to handle. I would say this deck is not it's not in like high favorabilities. It's in the low favorabilities, but still favored regardless. You have a lot more ways to handle their board than they do yours. Abyss aggro, as it was originally in favorable, I put it into neutral. This is because of the fact that the deck literally comes down to your Sailfas. Very rarely does Sailfa not make the deciding factor on whether you win or lose. Overall, that's just usually your biggest common factor. Mull for it if you have to. Make sure you have other stuff though, because if you're just relying on Sailfa, you're gonna lose. Plain and simple. If you're passing till turn 4, turn 5, you're gonna lose. Like, you can't not have other cards as well. Artifact Portal is kind of neutral. I would say kind of neutral, kind of unfavorable, really your choice. Here's what the matchup really comes down to, and I'm not joking. What is their first transformed 5-cost artifact? If it is the burn one, you are going to be in a lot more trouble than any other artifact. Just plain and simple. To get around this, you need to apply a lot of pressure early on to force them into making the deal 3 damage to all of your guys. This makes the matchup insanely easy. And I'm not joking. When I verse Portal and they make the deal 3 to all follower guy, I'm like, wow, this matchup just got insanely easy. Because they are not burning you for 4 for a while. And they are not hitting you very easily for a while. And by then, you're going to have multiple Sailfas in your hand to heal any burn damage they try to hit you with. And later on, when you have Wilbert and you have Aether, they're going to need multiple of these burn cards to have the 3 damage mean anything. They're going to like, oh, I'm going to hit everything for 3. And it's like, cool, my cards have like 6 to like 9 health. You need multiple, buddy. Which then forces them into having to commit a second one, right? And if they commit a second one, now they're super behind. And you're kind of just in a pretty good spot as a whole. But if you don't apply a lot of pressure early on and they get into the burn one, you're in trouble. Because every time they would have tried to clear your board, they're just going to burn you instead. And that's really going to hurt after a while. Because you don't have a lot of heal in this deck. Your only heal is Sailfa, who goes neutral against 1 of their burns. So you need to apply enough pressure early on to force them into the 3 damage to all followers. But so depending on how your opening hand is, it really could sway one way or the other. Generally in this matchup, Beast Princesses are very nice to try to put that pressure early on into forcing them to have to create that 5/30 rather than the 4/4. It also, the draw 2 is always nice, because let's be honest, drawing is always nice, and you generally want something to protect your Tigers with, so they can't just go face with random stuff, right? This deck is Spell Chain. Spell Chain is honestly kind of neutral, kind of unfavorable. It really is a weird one. Sometimes it's like, okay, it's kind of a close game, but I beat you. I generally beat them more than they beat me nowadays. So that's why I can't really put it in unfavorable. But at the same time, I do know a lot of people do start to have trouble with them. So like, I can't put it in favorable. And there are times where it's literally just like, oh, well, I hit the high roll, you auto lose. And so that's the reason why I couldn't put it in favorable. But overall, I think neutral is respectable. Like, if they don't have Cocytus, they can't kill you, and some builds aren't running him anymore. I've bumped into a couple high-rated spell chain players, spell boost players, who aren't running it. And that's just how it is, because they don't need it as much as they used to, I guess. I don't know. Better, like, one of the games I'll show is against a, he won the Grand Prix in set 1. He won one of them. So he has the title, and that will be in later in the video, that matchup. And he didn't run it. I also show one of my diamond games against them, against a rune player as well, or spell chain as well. They also didn't have a chance to even play it. They died before they could play it, right? So it's like, the overall, I think it's neutral. I think that's a fair spot to put it. Mirror match, obviously all mirror matches are gonna be neutral. Let's be real. Like, it's you're playing their deck. I will be honest though, it really, really, really does come down to who gets. If one gets Wilbert and the other doesn't get Wilbert, it's like a 95% chance the person who got Wilbert's winning. Just how it is. Puppets is interesting. I'm trying to think. They don't run Liam anymore, and you have a lot of cards that can kind of handle Orcus. The problem is you need to use your super evolves and your evolves and stuff like that kind of faster than they do. So what ends up happening is you come into a circumstance where you need to have cards to kill their super evolves without evolves, if that makes sense. So, like, for example, a Jean plus Divine Barrier, Divine Shield, or whatever it's called. Yeah, that'll out it, because Jean will kill all the puppets, and then the Barrier will kill Orcus, right? Or just a, well, I can't remember what it's called, Dark Hole, I think it's called. It's not actually called Dark Hole, but Dark Hole, right? Odin isn't as good into that because Odin can't actually kill the puppet ward, but it can at least banish the Orcus, right? So overall, it really just comes down to how well your board clear is able to handle the 2 Orcus plays you're going to deal with, or if you force them into doing something that isn't Orcus. That really is what it comes down to. It's not that hard of a matchup as a whole. It's RNG to some degree, but because it's RNG, you can't put it in favorable or unfavorable. It's pretty neutral. It's pretty... Do you have the answers to their Orcus? Yes, you win. The next 2 matchups are actually very unfavorable. That being Ramp Dragon and Control Midrange Abyss, whichever you want to call it. Pretty much, I win maybe 1 out of 10 of these games at most, right? Ramp Dragon, did they brick? If they bricked, congrats, you actually have a chance to win. If they didn't brick, congrats, you have almost no chance to win. And it's just that straightforward, to be honest. If they ramp turn 3 and then ramp turn 4, you're probably losing if they have the 8-drop 4/4. Just how it is. You just gotta accept it. Even if you try to aggro them quickly, you can't deal enough damage to have like that sticks because they have the draw 2 heal 3. They have Neptune, or whatever her name is, and that just creates a crest that causes a ton of healing, and you just can't get through it. You just can't. It's pretty unfavorable. You're going to lose most of those games. It's just how it is, honestly. Unless there's a build I'm not aware of for Ward Haven that can do better into it. It kind of really is just you're about to have not a good time. And the last one being Control Midrange Abyss. This class, or this deck, is insane. They run Odin, which counters Wilbert, and they have Gensetsu, which counters Aether. That alone creates a really bad problem for you, because your 2 strongest cards from this set are countered by their two strongest cards, and that's it. Odin kind of being neutral, but they can play it. So if you Aether, they're gonna Gensetsu and kill your board. It doesn't target, it doesn't do damage, it just kills. So even your barrier ward is going to die. If you William, they're gonna Odin, which that's why you need to play around the fact that they are gonna Odin you, and you need to always have a second ward so you don't take the damage as easily. Problem is, they have other ways to create bodies for free, right? Like, if you have a 5/5, they could pop a thing, summon 2 ghosts, summon the 1/1 skeleton, evolve it, swing into it for 3, ghost swing into it for 2 for each, kill your ward, and then Odin swings directly for 4. And it might not sound like a lot, but they outage your board pretty free, to be honest. They used 1 card to kill your 2 in the end. Well, they lost 1 card to kill 2 of yours. So. And honestly, in this matchup, it's a grind game. It's not a burst. Sorry about that. Just audio started acting up. Anyways, it's a grind game, not a burst game. Because of that, they just have the answers to your deck. You can't establish a board long term. I've actually had many games end with me losing because I decked out. They just held their Consensus for my Aethers. My Aether decks me out quickly. They held their Odins for my Wilberts. And if I tried anything else, they would just use, what's her name? Cerberus. If I tried putting early damage on, they would Cerberus to heal. It's a really, really hard matchup because they have a lot of cards that don't require evolves to do things, like Insetsu, like Odin. They have that card that has Rush that gains attack when something else super evolves. So, like, they have a lot, and they have a lot of ways to cause a recursion as well. They have a lot of Bane to kill your wards as well. So your barrier ward guy doesn't matter as much because it still auto dies to the Bane. Overall, I would say this is your worst matchup. At least with Ramp Dragon, if they brick, you can win. With Gensetsu's deck, I don't think realistically you should be winning most, if any, of your games for the most part. Again, there's always outliers, but overall, these two decks are just nightmares to deal with, and you just have to accept it. So, based off of particular matchups, you're going to want different type of cards in your hand to help you out throughout the game, stuff like that. So, I'm going to try to help you understand what cards are better early on versus later on. If you want to hold a card maybe for a late game investment versus an early game investment, things like that, right? I will say, other than Sanctuary, there isn't a realistic one card fits all circumstance. Sanctuary is like the only card that is like, if you have it in your hand, you absolutely keep it. You never mulligan for it, but if you have it, it's amazing. Divine Guard is always a mulligan out card. You don't want to keep it in your hand. It is not amazing until later in the game. When you get later in the game, Divine Guard will absolutely start paying off. But early on, it's not really worth, in my opinion. Bellringer Angel. Okay, Bellringer Angel and Sarita are generally pretty good cards to have in hand if you're versing aggro, which you don't know because every deck that can play aggro right now also can play other variants. So having them in your hand, if you have like 4 bad cards, keeping like Bellringer in your hand might not be bad if it's against a deck that could potentially be aggro, right? Just for the ward. But if you're versing aggro, the best card you could definitely ask for is your Pact of the Beast Princesses, Darkhaven's Grace, and then maybe one of these low-cost ward cards in your hand to help protect your Tiger. Other than that, you kind of don't really have much. Occasionally, Divine Guard, if you get stuck with it, can help. but it's not like overall your wards are pretty nice. Um, but your best card for early game is definitely the Pact of the Beast Princess, and you definitely want a Sailfa, especially if you're versing Abyss. You gotta try to mulligan for it, but you're not gonna like if you have like two Pact of the Beast Princesses, and like let's say like Cleric of the Crushing, right? Like you're kind of in a solid spot early game. Like these guys are gonna put some serious pressure on, counter pressure against the aggro decks. So you can kind of get away with it, but Sailfa is absolutely important when it comes to your aggro matchups. It really is. Grimnir is kind of in the middle of the road. You're not gonna keep him often unless like you're like, oh, that super evolve's gonna come in clutch. Like the 2 to all follower super evolve, right? Like if you have like Pact of the Beast Princess and like Grimnir, that's enough, right? Like that's enough. Like that's solid. You'll keep them because you have Pact of the Beast Princess, right? Something like that. But like overall, you're not realistically going to. You're gonna kind of get rid of them a lot of times as well. It kind of is just a feel based off of what you think you're versing, what other cards are in your hand. But like these guys are helpful. These like cards are really useful when you have like Darkhaven or Pact of the Beast Princess early on. Generally, you want at least one of them in your hand just to help anything that might be early on. If you know you're versing aggro or feeling like you're gonna be versing aggro, which if you're versing Abyss, always think you're versing aggro. Because if you don't, you're going to auto-lose. So you have to play as if you are versing aggro. Just have these low-cost cards. Sanctuary is huge. Never get rid of it if you have it in your hand. That draw 2 really can come in clutch. Keeps your momentum in your hand going. A lot of times, it just comes down to knowing what to evolve and when to evolve it. Like, sometimes Bellringer evolve is worth it because you draw 2 off of it. Like, between its evolve and dying, right? So, and becomes a 4-2, potentially a 5-3. Not 5-3. A 3-5. And then, all of a sudden, the Bellringer becomes a huge problem and drew you a card. And now, like, it really does come down to a lot of experience. This isn't like Hearthstone, where it's like, these are what you want to mulligan, and these are what you want to keep. Like, it really does come down to the matchup, it comes down to the feel, what you think you're versing. The game is a lot faster, a lot more explosive than Hearthstone, in my opinion, so because of that, you can't really just say this is a one-size-fits-all. It does help, though, as a whole, these cards, these early-on cards. These 4 cards are really here to massively deter aggro, so if you're versing aggro, you want them as much. The more you have them, the better, because realistically, like, if you have 3 Pact of the Beast Princess, and like you're golden. Like, most aggro decks can't handle turn 2. Like every single turn, they're like a 4/4 is coming on board. They're just eventually gonna crumble under the pressure to some degree. But Sailfa is like is the big one when you're coming to a aggro deck. You always want to try to have this in hand. This is the biggest safety net of them all. Coining for it turn 4 sometimes is absolutely a mandatory. That way you don't die to the early pressure. Sometimes you're like playing just bare minimum, like maybe turn 4 you're just like Holy Shield Maidening, Darkhaven's Grace, or just Holy Shield Maidening pass, or double Bellringer pass, right? Just to stall until you're at turn 4. Then you're gonna coin, summon Selifa, and clear their board, right? And heal for 3 of the damage they did. So in aggro, Selifa is like the biggest you want in your hand. Pact of the Beast Princess is up there too. Darkhaven's Grace is kind of up there. It's like slightly below because it requires other cards to be relevant. And Serenity's up there because of the draw 2. So those are like your big cards for aggro matchups, right? If you're versing the mirror match or any Haven deck, hard mill mulligan for Wilbert. Wilbert is actually just the deciding factor whether you win or lose. You just have to deal with it. If you are versing Haven, you are hard mulliganing. I mean, for Wilbert. The only time you wouldn't hard mulligan for Wilbert is if you have like a Serenity in your hand and then everything else is getting mulliganed. Like, if you have 4 cards and one of them Serenity, you're mulliganing 3 of them that isn't Serenity, 3 that aren't Serenity. Because Serenity just results in draw 2, right? So it's technically going to give you a better chance of seeing Wilbert. But past that, everything goes. You need Wilbert. When you don't have Wilbert, you lose if they have Wilbert. So, against more tempo-ish decks, like mid-rangey, honestly, Wilbert's still really nice to see. He's still up there majority of the time, just so you know you have the Wilbert emblem crest throughout the whole game to help you maintain pressure, maintain that advantage. If you're versing Sword, you always want Selifa as well. You don't know if it's mid-range or not. Like, these two would be nice into Sword, only if you have like a Pact of the Beast Princess and like a ward. Like, it really does help. Unholy Vessels, you're always gonna hard mull. Like, you're never gonna keep them in your hand starting off. It's just literally no point. Odin, I'm trying to think. Is there ever a time I see Odin in my hand and I'm like, oh, I want to keep this Odin? I genuinely... Actually, yes. No, not even in the mirror. Unless I already have Wilbert. If I have Wilbert, yes, I'm keeping my Odin. But if I don't have Wilbert, I am mulliganing the Odin in hopes it becomes a Wilbert. Because you just need the Wilbert that much in the mirror. Against Forest, okay, so Forest is weird. Forest is a free win, right? Like, I've never lost to a Forest player. However, I will say this. You are hard mulliganing for your Aether. Absolutely. If you drop Aether and you super evolve it, they probably aren't overcoming it. I'm going to be real with you. A lot of them will just surrender right there. But up until that point, they are actually still more a aggro deck in this particular matchup. They are going to try to aggro you out early on before you can get to Aether. So because of that, Selifa is absolutely massive. Wilbert is really nice because Wilbert will make your Aether a lot stronger. Into like Forest, you want Aether. Wilbert's nice, but not 100% required. Selifa is like really nice if you don't have like a really good low curve to go with it, because you generally want this Aether, right? So like Aether is like the most important one into Forest because they can't out the board that easily. They have to commit way too much to out it, and by the time they out it, you might have a second one. They've really just gassed their hand just trying to out the board. It's really nice. So Aether is the most important into Forest. Into Rune, you would think Aether is really good. However, they're just going to William it, and it's gonna most likely kill your board. So you're only Aethering. I wouldn't recommend super evolving Aether into Rune unless you know you want them to Aether. Like, if you're trying to set up pressure, right? Like, let's say realistically they don't have Onion. And you're like, oh, hey, there's a high chance I hit a Holy Shield Maiden, right? So I'm going to Aether, get the Holy Shield Maiden, super evolve to give her ward. And yeah, even if William comes out, which is probably going to be like his whole turn, right? She'll survive. So stuff like that. It's weird. It's not straightforward. A lot of it is in the moment decision making. So into Rune, Aether is a lot less important. Into Forest, Aether can pretty much become a free win. Jean is a hard mulligan in my personal opinion. This card, unless... Honestly, yeah, no, it's a hard mulligan. Like, it's really good later on, but holding it on, a Jean on in your hand from the beginning you're literally playing with one less card for over half the game. It's not worth it, right? So overall, the hard mulligans are Jean, Vessel, and Divine Guard. Like, you never want those in your hand at the beginning, in my opinion. Aether is situational. Odin is very situational. Like, emphasis on very. Wilbert is a incredibly high priority. You generally want him in your hand more than you don't. I don't think I've realistically ever mulliganed him. Maybe once. If you have two of him, definitely drop one of them out of your hand. Celifa is really good, period. If you're versing Portal or if you're versing Rune, she loses a lot of value. Into aggro matchups, she is infinitely better. Multiples isn't a bad thing if you're versing aggro. In fact, if you have two Celifa in aggro against aggro, it's actually huge because you're healing 6 and clearing their board twice. Your Crushing Cleric, your Holy Maiden, Grimnir, Sharita, and Leah Bellringer Angel. These cards are very situational. It comes down to other cards you have in your hand. A lot of times you are going to mulligan it out. Just to try to create better cards in your hand for the situation. Get better cards in the hand for the situation. But if you have Darkhaven's Grace or Pact of the Beast Princess, you want at least one of these wards in your hand. Grimnir probably being the highest prio, so you can get his crest early on. And Darkhaven being high prio, so you can have it and get the most out of it. But past that, they are usually mulliganed out. If I feel like I need the Grimnir's crest, I'll keep it. But that's very rare. And a lot of times I end up regretting not mulliganing him anyways. Sarisa is always mulligan, honestly. Like, always she's actually up there with, like, Divine Guard. These two are, like, she's in that tier. Always mulligan. And Sanctuary is actually a never mulligan. This is, like, the only card you will never mulligan, but you will never mulligan for. If that makes sense. If it's in your hand, that's amazing. If it's not in your hand, you're not going to mulligan in hopes to find a Sanctuary, unless you're also, like, trying to find, like, Wilbert, right? Then it's like, okay, like, I'd prefer Wilbert, but if I get Sanctuary, at least it's a draw 2 that gives me a better chance into Wilbert, right? Or, like, Celifa, or whatever matchup, like, whatever card you're looking for, this gives you 2 additional chances to find it by the time you most likely need it. Yeah, hopefully this part helps people understand the mulliganing. I'm going to do a quick chart of all the cards, and it's going to be a little scuffed, but this will give you a quick visual of all the cards in, like, tiers. So this is what it pretty much looks like when it comes to, like, the mulliganing, right? These are, like, the 4 cards you never want to keep. This card is almost you never want to keep unless you're kind of just in the mirror match and you already have Wilbert. These are all very situational cards to keep. Like, Aether is, like, really good into Forest, but she's probably a little bit better to see later on kind of deal, so you don't really want to have her in your hand too long. These cards are really good into, like, aggro, but even then you don't want too many of them because you're going to want other cards. And they're very situational and require multiple other cards for them to be more worth rather than others. It's very weird to how to put it. These are all, like, really situational, so they're going to be in the situational tier. Almost always keep or mull for them. Mull for them are your Celifa, Wilbert, and Darkhaven's Grace. These cards are insane. The faster you see them, the better you'll be. Keep in mind, again, Wilbert is a little bit of a trap to play on curve, but having him to know you're going to get that crest is huge. Celifa is just really good. She helps even into a lot of, like, mid-tier, like, you're versing Sword. They turn 5, summon a bunch of those ward guys. You summon her, it clears the whole board, right? Like, she really does put into a lot of effort. However, she does have a couple situations where she's not as good. That's why she's not in the always keep tier, because of Rune and because of Portal. She is a lot worse into those two. She's bad into Anne and Gray, and she's bad into the 4/6 that summons a 4/4 that, yeah, that guy, right? Like, she's really bad into those two because she doesn't clear either of them. You evolve, do damage, swing into one of them and kill him, and the other's still alive. It's nowhere as good as in the other's matchups. You could make a argument for other things. However, I would much rather for example, Pact of the Beast Princess and like Grimnir into Portal, because that pressures them into like they need to, or more so the artifact matchup, right? They need to make the 5/3 to clear the board, which reduces a lot of the damage you're going to receive from them, right, as a whole. So and then Sanctuary you always keep. You never mulligan for them, but you never mulligan them away. You always keep. Hope this helps a little bit with the hands overall. But yeah, now we can get into some games as a whole. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to add me on Shadowverse, hop by one of my streams, or, you know, just shoot me a message on Discord or something.
battle.